Introduction to the Middle Way. Introduction. The Middle Way, Majjhima Patipada, also known as the Path, Magga, i.e., the Fourth Noble Truth, embodies a set of principles for Buddhist practice. It is a complete code of Buddhist conduct. It comprises the practical teachings based on an understanding of Buddhist theoretical teachings, which guide people to the goal of Buddhism according to natural processes. It is a way of actualizing the teachings in one's own life, a method of applying natural laws and benefiting from them to the highest degree. To gain an initial understanding of the Middle Way, let us consider this teaching by the Buddha from the first sermon, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. A. The path as the middle way. Monks, these two extremes should not be followed by one who has gone forth into homelessness. What, 2. The indulgence in sensual happiness in sense pleasures, which is inferior, vulgar, low, ignoble, and hollow, and the pursuit of self-mortification, which is painful, ignoble, unbeneficial. The Tathagata has awakened to the middle way, which does not get caught up in either of these extremes, which gives rise to vision, which gives rise to knowledge, which leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. And what is that middle way, Majjhima Patipada? It is this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This teaching provides a complete summary of the meaning, essence, and purpose of the middle way. Note that it is a middle way or middle path, because it does not get caught up in either of the two extremes. Note, however, that this should not be understood to mean that the path lies between these two extremes. 1. Kama Sukhalikkhana Yoga, indulgence in sensual pleasures, the extreme of sensual indulgence, extreme hedonism. 2. Atta Kilamata Nu Yoga, the extreme of self-mortification, extreme asceticism. Occasionally, Buddhists and non-Buddhists alike give the expression the middle way a very broad meaning, to denote an action or thought that lies between two opposing actions or thoughts, or between actions and thoughts performed and held by two separate people or parties. This kind of midpoint or middle way does not have any solid basis. One must wait until two opposing parties arise in order to determine the halfway point, which hinges on the degree of belief or practice of these two factions. The midway shifts according to the changing stances of the two sides. Sometimes this kind of middle way appears to be the same as the middle way in Buddhism, Majjhima Patipada, but in fact it is counterfeit. The true middle way has definite criteria. The validity of the middle way rests with it having a clearly defined objective or goal. With the goal clearly defined, the path leading to this goal, or conduct that is apt, correct, and fruitful, is the middle way. This is similar to shooting an arrow or a gun. It is necessary to have a clear target. Accurate or correct shooting is any action expedient to having the arrow or bullet reach the target. The middle way in this context is shooting precisely and directly at the target. All deviating shots, veering off to any number of directions, are flawed in and inaccurate. In contrast to these errant shots, one sees that there is only one target, which is directly in the middle and clearly defined, and the path leading to the target likewise is a middle path. The correct path has its own true goal, which is not determined by trajectories of the errant shots. The middle way has the definite goal of liberation, the end of suffering. The path Magga, the system of thought, action and conduct that is consistent with and effective in regard to this goal, is thus the middle way Majjhima Patipada. Because the middle way has a clearly defined goal, or because the middle way is dependent on having such a goal, the Dhamma practitioner must know this goal in order to walk on the path. One must know in which direction one is going. For this reason, the middle way is a path of wisdom and begins with right view. It begins with an understanding of one's problems and of one's destination. It is a path of understanding, reason, and acceptance, and requires courage to face the truth. When people possess this knowledge and courage, they are able to manage their lives on their own, to live a correct and virtuous life independently, without relying on external, sacred, supernatural, or divine powers. And when people have developed confidence based on their own wisdom, they need not get caught up in and worried about things they believe to exist outside of the normal human sphere. This confidence is one attribute of the middle way. When one understands one's problems and the way to the goal, a traveller on the path gains the additional understanding that the middle way gives value to one's life. There is more to life than succumbing to worldly currents, being enslaved by material enticements, or wishing solely for delicious sensual pleasures. By allowing one's happiness, virtue, and value to be utterly dependent on material things and the fluctuations of external factors. Instead, one cultivates freedom and self-assurance, and one recognizes one's own inherent value. Besides not inclining towards the extreme of materialism to the point of enslavement and dependency on material things, the middle way does not incline towards spiritual extremes. It does not teach that all things are exclusively dependent on effort and mental attainments, to the point that one abandons material things and neglects one's body, resulting in a form of self-mortification. Conduct in accord with the middle way is characterized by non-oppression, both towards others and oneself, and by an understanding of phenomena, both material and mental. One then practices with accurate knowledge, in tune with causes and conditions, and conducive to bearing fruit in accord with the goal. One does not practice simply to experience pleasurable sense impressions, or out of some naive belief that things must be done in a particular way. If someone alludes to the middle way, or to walking the middle path, one should ask whether he or she understands the problems at hand and the goal to which this path leads. The principles of the middle way can be applied to all human work and activity. Generally speaking, all human systems, traditions, academic fields of study, institutions, and everyday activities, like formal education, aim to solve problems, reduce suffering, and help people realize higher forms of virtue. A proper relationship to these systems traditions, etc., requires an understanding of their objective, which is to relate them with wisdom and right view, in accord with the middle way. It is commonly apparent, however, that people often practice incorrectly and do not understand the true objectives of these systems, procedures, and activities. Incorrect practice deviates in one of two ways. Some people use these systems and activities as an instrument or opportunity for self-gratification. For instance, in politics, they use this system as a way to seek material gain, fame, and power. They perform their function and increase their formal knowledge in order to enrich themselves and to achieve influential positions, to maximize their own comfort and pleasure. They do not act in order to achieve the true objective of that work or field of knowledge. Rather than having right view, they are subject to wrong view, miccaditi. Another group of people are resolutely dedicated to work or study. They raise money, muster inner strength, and sacrifice time with great devotion. They do not understand the true purpose of the activity. They do not know, for example, what problems should be solved by performing it. They end up wasting their time, money, and energy, causing themselves trouble and exhaustion in vain. This is another way of lacking right view. The first group of people set their own objectives in order to gratify craving. They do not act in accord with the true objective or the activity or work. The second group of people simply act without understanding the real purpose of their actions. These two groups fall into two extremes. They do not walk the middle way, and they generate more problems for themselves. Only when they are able to follow the middle way, acting with knowledge, conforming to the true objective of that particular activity, are they able to successfully solve problems and eliminate suffering. In sum, if one does not begin with the right view, one does not access the middle way. If one does not follow the middle way, one is not able to reach the end of suffering. B. The path as a form of practice and as a way of life for both monks and laypeople. Monks. I do not praise the wrong path, whether for a layperson or for one gone forth. Whether it is a layperson or one gone forth who is practicing wrongly, because of undertaking the wrong way of practice, he does not attain the right path, which is wholesome. And what is the wrong path? It is wrong view to wrong concentration. I praise the right path, both for a layperson and for one gone forth, whether it is a layperson or one gone forth who is practicing correctly. Because of undertaking the right way of practice, he attains the right path, which is wholesome. And what is the right path? It is right view, right concentration. Monks. Just as the river Ganges flows, slopes, and inclines towards the ocean, so too a monk who develops and cultivates the Noble Eightfold Path aspires, slopes, and inclines towards Nibbana. Master Gautama. Just as the river Ganges flows, slopes, inclines towards, and merges with the ocean, so too Master Gautama's assembly with its homeless ones and its householders aspires, slopes, inclines towards, and merges with Nibbana. These passages on right and wrong practice reveal how the Buddha intended the middle way to be applicable to all people, both renunciants and laity. It is a teaching to be realized and brought to completion by everyone, monks and householders alike. C. The path as a spiritual practice connected to society. Ananda, having good friends and having good companions and a delight in associating with virtuous people is equivalent to the entire holy life. When a monk has a good friend, it is to be expected that he will develop and cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path. Monks, just as the dawn is the forerunner and the precursor of the rising of the sun, so too having a virtuous friend is the forerunner and precursor for the arising of the Noble Eightfold Path for a monk. These passages show the importance of the relationship between people and their social environment, which is a vital factor influencing and supporting Buddhist practice. They show that in Buddhism, one's way of life and spiritual practice is intimately connected to society. Monks, just as the dawn is the forerunner and precursor of the rising of the sun, so too the fulfillment of wise reflection, Yoniso Manasikara, is the forerunner and precursor for the arising of the Noble Eightfold Path for a monk. It is to be expected of a monk who has brought wise reflection to completion, that he will develop and cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path. This passage introduces the notion that, although social factors are vital, one should not overlook the importance of spiritual factors inherent in an individual. Both internal and external factors can be the impetus for spiritual practice and conducting one's life correctly. In fact, these two factors are mutually supportive. This passage emphasizes that correct spiritual practice, or a virtuous life, results from the integration of these two factors, and progress on the path towards the highest goal of life is most successful when these two factors serve and aid one another. Note, however, that the teachings often give more emphasis to the social factor of having virtuous companionship than to the internal factor of wise reflection. There are passages, as the one above, which equate the value of having good friends as equivalent to the entire practice of the Buddhist teachings, referred to here as the holy life, brahmacharya. This is because most people must rely on social factors in order to initiate right practice and a virtuous life, or to begin on the noble path. Moreover, wholesome social factors act as both the trigger for enabling wise reflection and for the support for augmenting and advancing wise reflection. There are very few exceptions to this rule, namely, those extraordinary persons who can progress safely on the path, relying solely on their own inherent spiritual endowment. They are able to commence with wise reflection without outside influence, and to constantly summon wise reflection without relying on social factors. These passages are thus intended for the majority of people who possess an average degree of spiritual faculties. The subject of social factors in relation to internal factors is very important and will be addressed at more length in subsequent chapters. The path as a way to end karma. This Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the cessation of karma, that is, right view to right concentration. The middle way here is the way leading to the cessation of karma. It is very important, however, not to interpret this to mean the following: that it simply refers to the passing away of the body to dying, or that it refers to ending karma by not producing karma or not doing anything at all, which is the doctrine of the Jains, as described in the chapter on karma, or that it refers to abandoning activity and living in a state of passivity. The ending of karma requires activity and earnest endeavour, but it is action in accord with the middle way, in accord with a proper method of action, as opposed to errant behaviour. And the expression cessation of karma does not mean inactivity or complacency, but rather an end to the actions of unawakened persons, and the start to actions of noble beings. Ordinary people act with craving and grasping. They attach to personal ideas of what is good and bad, and to things providing some form of personal advantage. The actions of such people are technically referred to as karma, which is classified as either good or bad. The end of karma refers to ceasing to act with an attachment to personal views of right and wrong, and with a hunger for personal gain. When personal attachment to right and wrong are absent, the subsequent actions are not referred to as karma, because karma requires taking sides, requires for things to be either good or evil. The actions of awakened beings, on the other hand, are in harmony with the pure reason or objective of that particular activity. They are not tied up with any craving or grasping. Awakened persons do no wrong, because no one causes or condition, because no more causes or conditions exist which would compel them to misbehave. No greed, hatred, or delusion remains in their minds which would drive them to seek personal gain. They only perform good actions, acting solely with wisdom and compassion. The term good here, however, is used according to the understanding of general people. Awakened beings do not attach to the ideas of personal goodness, or to goodness as some mark of personal identity. Generally speaking, when ordinary people perform good deeds, they do not act purely in accord with the true objective of such deeds, but tend to expect some kind of personal reward as a result. On a subtle level, this may be a wish for personal prestige, or even a sense of internal well-being that I have done good. Awakened persons, however, perform good acts purely in accord with the purpose, objective, and necessity of such an action. Their actions are thus technically not referred to as karma. The path is a way of practice for bringing an end to volitionally produced actions, karma. When karma ceases, only pure actions referred to as doing, kriya, following the guidance of wisdom, remain. This is the distinction between the mundane and the transcendent courses of action. The Buddha and the Arahants teach and act for the welfare of all people without their actions constituting karma. In the vernacular, their actions are referred to simply as acts of goodness. E. The path as a practical tool. Monks. Suppose a man in the course of a long journey saw a great expanse of water, whose near shore was frightening and dangerous, and whose far shore was safe and free from danger. But there was no ferry boat or bridge crossing to the other shore. Then he thought, there is this great expanse of water, whose near shore is frightening and dangerous. Suppose I collect grass, pieces of wood, branches, and leaves, and bind them together into a raft, and supported by the raft and making an effort with my hands and feet, I got safely across to the far shore. And then the man collected grass and leaves, and bound them together into a raft, and got safely across to the far shore. Then, when he had got across and had arrived at the far shore, he might think thus, this raft has been very helpful to me, since, supported by it, I got safely across to the far shore. Suppose I were to hoist it on my head, or load it on my shoulders, and then go wherever I want. Now, monks, what do you think? By doing so, would that man be doing what should be done with the raft? The monks replied, No, venerable sir, and the Buddha continued, By doing what would a man be doing what should be done with that raft? Here, monks, when that man got across and had arrived at the far shore, he might think thus, This raft has been very helpful to me. Suppose I were to haul it onto the dry land, or tie it up at the water's edge, and then go wherever I want. Now, monks, it is by so doing that that man would be doing what should be done with that raft. The Dhamma is similar to a raft, which I have revealed to you for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping. When you thoroughly understand the Dhamma, which is similar to a raft, as I have illustrated, you should abandon even good states, not to mention bad states. Monks, purified and bright as this view is, if you adhere to it, are enthralled by it, cherish it, and treat it as a possession, would you then understand the Dhamma that has been taught as similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping? These two passages caution against grasping at virtuous qualities, including grasping at the truth or at what is right, by which a person fails to benefit from their true value and objective. Moreover, they emphasize viewing all virtuous qualities and all Dhamma teachings as means or methods leading to a specific goal. They are neither arbitrary nor are they ends in themselves. When practicing a particular Dhamma teaching, it is important to realize its objective, along with its relationship to other teachings. The term objective here does not only refer to the final goal, but also to the final function of that particular teaching or spiritual quality. To know, for example, how cultivating a specific quality supports or generates other qualities, what its limits are, and once its function is complete, to know what other qualities take over responsibility. This is similar to being on a journey in which one must use different vehicles at various stages to pass over land, water, and air. It is insufficient to simply have a general idea of one's destination. One needs to know how far each vehicle can travel, and having reached a location, one knows which is the next vehicle to use. Spiritual practice lacking insight into these objectives, requirements, and interrelationships is limited and obstructed. Even worse, it leads people off the right track. It misses the target, and it is stagnant, futile, and fruitless. Aimless spiritual practice causes misunderstandings and harmful consequences. It undermines such important spiritual qualities as contentment and equanimity.